What up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I'm back with another toy review. This time it is the Walmart exclusive, super articulated, amazing Spider-Man. 6-inch scale, super articulated, amazing Spider-Man figure. I was kind of thinking about getting the Marvel Select version, but I figured off the bat, Marvel Select figures don't have the kind of posability that you usually get from Marvel Legends or these movie series figures. So yeah, I opted to get this, and I actually didn't know when they were coming out. I walked into the my local Walmart today, and there he was, all three of them actually. I'm avoiding the Miles Morales figure because they made a 13-year-old boy look like a grown-ass man. And even though I love the costume and I love the character, that toy doesn't do the character justice. He's not even, his fingers aren't even in the thwippy finger pose, which, what the fuck, it's a Spider-Man toy. But anyway, that's a whole nother review for another day. This figure it's a whole different mixed bag for me. I'm going to say right from the beginning, before I even get into the details of this figure, when a figure says super articulated, I'm going to compare him to my super articulated Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man figure. That figure had, from head to toe, the most articulation in a figure that I've had, period, next to an SH Figuarts. So as far as American figures go, that is the most articulated figure that I have ever had. And that's not counting 12-inch, military figures. So when comparing this figure to that, we have some things that I need to show you, which I will show you in just a little bit. So here we go. So I spent a lot of time posing him, trying to see how posable he really was. Because like I said, I'm comparing him to my Spider-Man 2 super posable Spidey. And this was the best swinging pose I could get him in. Then I thought back to like how the Spider-Man 2 figure was really good at crouching, because he had really good shoulder articulation. He had lots of trunk or torso articulation, and you could get him to stoop and squat and all those Spidey, elbows and kneecap poses that, you always see Spider-Man in. So, I got out or I didn't even get him out because I have him on display prominently with my other Marvel figures. I grabbed him from the crouching position I had him in over there on the display, and then I was like, let me see if I can get him to balance on the stands that I use during these reviews. These are the Play Arts stands. So this is the best that I could do with the super posable or super articulated amazing Spider-Man, which is kind of horrible. He's missing so many joints that allowed the previous one to actually squat and lean forward and get into those Spider-Man-like poses. And it gets worse because I went further and, posed him up a little bit more, It's just weird that, like, they would put that on the box and not really follow through and make the figure ultra posable or super articulated or whatever. Super posable. It bothered me horribly because I was waiting for Hasbro to up the ante and actually do it. I mean, look at this shit. He's literally balancing on that. I'm not using any tricks. I didn't use anything else to hold him up. I'm just showing you how many joints they used and how the figure can support itself even with over, 34 points of articulation. I mean, his individual fucking fingers move. And he can still make a closed fist as well as the thwip, web shooting pose. What the fuck? This was Toy Biz at its finest. This is the stuff that when I complain about the old Marvel Legends kicking the shit out of the new Marvel Legends, this is what I'm talking about. This Spider-Man is the epitome of what a Spider-Man figure should be. He's the only figure that should have all these joints all over the place. Some Marvel Legends have joints that they don't use. There's no reason why my old Bishop should have articulated fingers. No, he should have hands that can hold guns. you know, because he's a big guy. So it looks like Mr. Garfield in toy form has a lot to do to live up to Mr. Maguire in toy form. I still love the sculpt, and I think the figure is still awesome because it's a movie figure, but I wish they had marketed it as such or labeled it as such so that, you know, those of us who know the difference between super articulated and not, we wouldn't be going into this thinking, hey, we could do all the stuff that we could do with the other figure with this one, because, you know, you can't see the back, so you can't really tell if he has those cool extra shoulder and back joints. You can't see what kind of swivels are going on when the figure's in the package, but he can't assume these poses. And these are basic poses. These aren't even swinging poses or anything like the pose that I showed you in the very beginning of the video when I mentioned that I'm going to compare him. This one. Tell me that's not an iconic pose that you've seen Spidey in thousands upon millions upon billions of times, you know? It's what he should be doing. And I don't give them props for what they had been doing. The version that we have here is a good figure as far as movie figures go, and I like the fact that he retains most of the Marvel Legends, the new Marvel Legends, you know, articulation, but he's no Spider-Man 2, you know, superposable Spidey. Definitely not. He's got a long way to go. And, you know, the articulation is the biggest thing because Spider-Man is a super agile character. So he wins when it comes to this. As far as paint apps and everything else, they're pretty close because there was a lot of detail that needed to be on the original figure that was, you know, not necessarily present on this figure. But still, and I noticed so many reviewers ignored this. They didn't mention anything about the fact that it said he was a superposable. They mentioned the fact that the lizard said superposable, or that, you know, Miles Morales was made from the Spider-Man from the current Marvel Legends buck that's been used for so many other characters, from Deadpool to Quicksilver. And even that one is not as posable as this one. You could just see all the points of articulation. I mean, look at his freaking trunk. Even in his arms, you can see so much articulation. And granted, that kind of makes the figure not as pretty, but there are Marvel Legends in the current line that have similar articulation. I mean, look at that. He's got 3 different sets of joints in his torso, whereas this one has 1. He doesn't even have a waist swivel. He's got that stupid diaphragm shit that I've hated. It took a long time for me to get used to that. The Marvel Legends knees, the original Marvel Legends knees and thighs that work fine, and the swivel that fit perfectly. Even the kneecaps, the double jointed knees. Look at how it's really hard to get that thing to stay straight on the Amazing Spider-Man figure, but it's really easy to get the original one to click into place where it should go. He does get slack over time, which is my only gripe. But I mean, just look at that. One doesn't look natural and one does. And it's weird too because they also sculpted the Amazing Spider-Man figure to look super realistic, but it doesn't really follow Andrew Garfield's frame. So in some ways, they pulled their usual Marvel Legends trademark, like sculpting up a character, you know, but they didn't do it in a way that actually helped make the character a little bit better, to make him look a little bit better. You can see in the shoulder, there's room on the old school one for way upward movement. The hands, on this one, the hands are very, you know, simple hands. They look like holding things hands that they made for the edge of his webbing. It's very standard. It's not very, how do I put it? It's just not very all-encompassing as far as things you would need him to hold. It's easier if you just give him the joints in his fingers, like they did with this Spider-Man. I mean, they could have called this one the Ultimate Spider-Man figure, because it looks like Spidey, and he has all the posability of Spidey. I mean, think of all the different comic book style poses that you always see Spider-Man in, and think of what you can do now that you have joints for all the fingers. That's superposable. That makes perfect sense. I have 12-inch figures that are considered superposable, and they have this same feature. It would make a lot of sense. I have SH Figuarts that have similar features because, in a sense, they went around this by giving you extra hands so that you wouldn't have to worry about posing each individual finger. But still, articulation, this Spider-Man kills that supposed super articulated Spider-Man. I mean, it's weird. Spider-Man 2, Spidey versus the Amazing Spider-Man. And, you know, they got the look really, really on point. You know, and in that movie, you see Spidey pull off some really agile moves and some really cool comic book accurate poses and whatnot. And that's not what you can do with this figure. So, in my opinion, if you are looking for a super articulated Spider-Man figure, ignore this figure. Ignore the Marvel Select. Just go out and find this one. It might be expensive, but it'd be worth it. As far as the Amazing Spider-Man as a figure, it's well sculpted. It almost looks to me like it's an upsized version of the smaller, what was it, 3 3/4 inch Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, sometimes from certain angles, it just looks like it is that same toy, just upsized. All of the details are there. They got, all the colors are pretty right. And I had a feeling they would be in comparison to the Marvel Select. The Marvel Select was really dark looking. And as much as I like Marvel Select, I also had a feeling that it would be a larger figure. So I had to opt to get this one instead of the Marvel Select. Also, you know, I only recently found a place that sells Marvel Selects around my way. That's, you know, it's got all of them, not just a few of them. And I finally saw it too, and I'm just like, you know, the benefit would have been to get the one with the Andrew Garfield head, but if I'm not going to get that, then I don't need it, you know. But you can see here, this one detailed the web shooters as well, which is pretty nice. It's a nice detail. It's a pretty cool piece of information that you get to see on the figure because all the other details are there. One thing I noticed is that just getting him into all these poses, there's a ton of rubbing going on all along the edges of the hip joints and the ball socket for his hips as well. I don't know, hip swivel and ball socket. That's where all the rubbing is going on. So I don't know, that was stuff that happened from when I first posed him opening up the package. They did paint the silver on his shoes, a nice little touch. Personally, I don't understand the shoes. This was one of the things that I had. The only aspect of the costume I didn't really dig, because if those fibers, those little hairs go through the costume so that he can stick to walls, how does it go through the soles on his shoes? The spider on his chest, really well sculpted, well painted. Looks like somebody had insane patience. The one on his back, same deal. Mine is a little bit off, but it's nothing to like complain about. I was expecting them to kind of skimp on it, but you know, they didn't. They did a good job. All the stripes painted. And it's funny too, because you think about all the past movie series figures and how they predominantly used the different colored plastics to make the figure, and they did that here, but they carried the paint throughout the figure, and it's pretty elaborate paint when you consider what is being moved around and what the shapes are and how the shapes look. So props to Hasbro for that. They did a good job with that, you know. And the figure feels pretty durable, so I'll give them that. The eyes, I know a lot of people complained about the eyes. If, you know, the first complaint was how did Spidey make his costume on the budget that he had? Those are lenses. They fit. It looks fine. They're reflective enough to look like lenses, but they're big enough and colored properly enough for you to understand that they are lenses, but they reflect enough light that they don't look so yellow that it's distracting. I mean, it looks close to this, you know, in certain light. Although I do like this design better, because it's just so close to the original. It's probably the closest to the comics that we've ever gotten in a movie costume, you know? So props to Hasbro for that, or props to Toy Biz for what I just showed you, and props to Hasbro for recapturing or capturing the look from the movie so accurately. Now, I know many of you are going to say, you know, should I buy this figure? It all depends on if you're a Spider-Man fan. Like I said in previous reviews and previous just videos, you know, I spent a lot of my childhood reading Spider-Man books. Mostly stuff done by Mark Bagley, stuff drawn by Alex Savia, which was during the 90s. That was 80s, 90s Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man. I really dug the cartoon up to a point, but I did watch it all the way through, and I'm talking about the, you know, Spider-Blood, Spider-Man back in the 90s. So for me, if they make a new suit, I usually get the figure, if it's a movie especially. I'm not such a big fan of the new stuff that they put in the comics, because I honestly don't see how some of that fits his character, like that Future Foundation costume. Yeah, no. But all in all, it's a pretty decent figure though. It's another decent Movie Masters figure with decent posability. He's definitely not super posable or super articulated, but he is very, you know, he's got decent articulation. And, you know, even though he is not the Spider-Man 2 figure, he's, you know, playable. You would have fun with him, you know. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would give this toy maybe a 6. Now here's a little preview of some things coming down the pipeline. I picked up the Iron Man 2 movie series, or comic series, Ultimate Iron Man, which is the tinier one, 3 3/4 inch. And also I picked up the TMNT Classics Michelangelo, because they didn't have Leonardo, only Mike and Raph. So stay tuned for those reviews. I'm Strident. That's been my story. I'm sticking to it, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace outside.